The call came on a Wednesday morning, the kind that makes your hands go cold before your brain catches up. I was sitting in my armchair, the one Linda picked out 15 years ago, watching the desert sunrise paint my backyard gold. The caller ID showed Valley Financial Group. Mr. Harrison? This is Monica Chen from Valley Financial. We need to meet. Today, if possible. Her voice had that careful quality people use when delivering bad news. I'd heard it before, in hospital waiting rooms. Is something wrong with my accounts? A pause. Too long. Mr. Harrison, I can't discuss this over the phone, but please, don't mention this call to anyone, especially not to your son. Can you come to my office at 2 o'clock? I sat there after she hung up, phone still pressed to my ear, watching the light change on the Ocotillo outside my window. Don't mention it to my son. To David. The words didn't make sense, like she'd spoken them in the wrong order. David was in the kitchen. I could hear him making coffee, talking to Rebecca, his wife. They'd been living with me for 8 months now. Temporary, David had said. Just until they got back on their feet. Just until they found their own place in Scottsdale. The housing market was brutal, he'd explained. They needed to save for a bigger down payment. For Emma's sake, their 7-year-old, my granddaughter. I'd said yes without hesitation. The house was too big for one person anyway. Linda and I had bought it 30 years ago, raised David here, planned to grow old here together. Well, one of us had grown old here, just not together. Dad? David appeared in the doorway, coffee mug in hand. You okay? You look pale. Fine. Just a call from the financial advisor. Routine checkup. The lie came easily. Too easily. That should have told me something. Monica Chen's office was in a strip mall off Shea Boulevard, between a nail salon and a physical therapy clinic. She was younger than I expected, maybe 40, with the kind of direct gaze that meant she'd seen trouble before and knew how to recognize it. She didn't waste time on pleasantries. Mr. Harrison, when was the last time you reviewed your account statements? I'm not sure. David usually handles that sort of thing now. He offered to help, said I shouldn't have to worry about paperwork in my retirement. Her expression didn't change, but something flickered behind her eyes. Pity, maybe. She turned her computer monitor toward me. My retirement account, the one Linda and I had built over 35 years, the one that was supposed to fund my retirement, maybe leave something for David and Emma. This transaction here, March 15th, a transfer of $45,000 to an external account. Do you remember authorizing this? I stared at the screen. March 15th. That was 2 months ago. I didn't remember. David had said something about investment opportunities, diversification. He worked in tech sales, talked about markets and portfolios with an easy confidence that made me feel old and confused. I think David might have mentioned something. And this one, April 3rd, 38,000. April 22nd, 52,000. The numbers kept coming. $135,000. Gone. Moved to accounts I didn't recognize. Mr. Harrison, these transactions required your authorization. Do you remember signing for them? David has my power of attorney, medical and financial. We set it up after Linda passed. In case something happened to me, he could take care of things. Monica's jaw tightened. She pulled out a folder, opened it carefully like it might contain something explosive. Mr. Harrison, I need to ask you a direct question. Did you authorize your son to make these transfers? The office was very quiet. I could hear the hum of the air conditioning, the muffled sound of traffic outside. I'm not sure, he said. He said there were better investment opportunities. He's good with that stuff. I trusted him. When was the last time you accessed your online banking? I don't. David set up automatic bill pay. He said it was easier, less for me to worry about. She closed her eyes briefly. When she opened them, there was something harder there. Mr. Harrison, I'm going to be very direct with you. I've been monitoring your accounts because certain patterns raised flags in our fraud detection system. The transfers I showed you, they went to accounts in your son's name. He's been systematically draining your retirement fund. At the current rate, you'll have nothing left in 6 months. The words landed like physical blows. I felt each one, But they didn't hurt yet. That would come later. There's more, she continued. 2 weeks ago, someone attempted to add a direct beneficiary to your accounts. Your son, if that goes through, if something happens to you, he gets everything immediately. No probate, no oversight. David wouldn't. He's my son. I know this is difficult, but I need you to understand the severity. You're being financially abused, and I strongly recommend you take immediate action. She pulled out more papers. Bank statements I'd never seen. Credit card charges on a card I didn't remember applying for. $23,000 in the last 4 months. Restaurants I'd never been to. Stores I'd never shopped at. A payment to a casino in Las Vegas. I've prepared a list of steps you should take, Monica said, her voice gentler now. First, revoke the power of attorney. Second, change all your passwords and PINs. Third, and I'm serious about this, consider consulting an elder law attorney. What's happening to you? It's not just unethical. It's potentially criminal. I drove home in a daze. The desert stretched out brown and gold on either side of the highway, the mountains sharp against the sky. Linda had loved this view. She'd loved this city, this house, this life we'd built. What would she say if she could see what I'd become? A foolish old man letting his own son rob him blind. Except I hadn't seen it. That was the thing that kept circling in my mind. I hadn't seen it because I hadn't wanted to look. When I pulled into my driveway, Rebecca was loading grocery bags from her car. My car, actually. The Lexus I'd bought last year. She'd been using it since theirs broke down 3 months ago. Hi, Robert. Did you have a nice lunch with your friend? I'd told them I was meeting an old colleague. Another lie. Fine. Where's David? Golf with clients. He'll be home for dinner. She smiled at me, bright and easy. I'm making that pot roast you like. Inside the house, everything looked normal. David's laptop was open on the kitchen counter. Emma's backpack by the door. The refrigerator covered in her drawings. This was my family. My son. My granddaughter. This was supposed to be my soft landing after Linda died. After retirement. After all those years of work. I went to my bedroom and closed the door. Then I did something I hadn't done in months. I logged into my bank accounts on my phone. Not the app David had set up for me, but directly through the website. The first password didn't work. Password reset required. The email address on file wasn't mine. It was David's. I tried my brokerage account. Same thing. Email changed to David's. Security questions. I didn't remember setting up. What city were you born in? I entered Brooklyn. Incorrect. I'd been born in Brooklyn. 53 years in Brooklyn before the job transferred me to Phoenix. Someone had changed everything. Someone who knew my information but wanted to lock me out. I sat on the edge of my bed, Linda's picture on the nightstand beside me, and felt something crack open inside my chest. That was when I knew Monica Chen wasn't wrong. That was when I knew my son was stealing from me. Methodically, deliberately, while living in my house and eating at my table and letting his daughter call me Papa. The next morning, I drove to Best Buy and bought something I'd never imagined I'd need. Security cameras. Small ones. The kind that connect to an app on your phone. The kid at the store walked me through the setup, patient with my clumsy questions. I installed them when the house was empty. One in the living room, hidden behind a picture frame. One in the kitchen, tucked above the cabinets. One in the hallway outside my bedroom. I told myself I was being paranoid. That Monica was wrong. That there had to be an explanation. I spent the afternoon with Emma while Rebecca ran errands, and David was at work. We played Go Fish, and she told me about her second-grade class, and I tried to memorize the way she looked right then, 7 years old with her mother's dark hair and my son's smile, because I had a feeling everything was about to change. That night, after Emma went to bed, I sat in my room with my phone, watching the camera feeds. David and Rebecca in the kitchen, cleaning up from dinner. How much longer do you think we need to play this game? Rebecca's voice came through tiny but clear on my phone's speaker. I don't know. Few more months, maybe. Once we get the house refinanced with him as co-signer, we'll have more options. I'm so tired of pretending, David. I'm tired of this house and this old man and having to act grateful all the time. My hands were shaking. I turned the volume down, terrified they'd somehow hear it. I know, baby. But we're almost there. Another 100K from the retirement accounts. The refinance goes through, and we can start the nursing home conversation. You really think he'll go for that? He'll do whatever I tell him to. He's been doing it for 8 months. Guilt is a powerful thing. He thinks he owes me for all those years he chose work over family, for not being there when Mom was sick. The words were like bullets. Each one found its mark, because each one was true. I had worked too much. I had missed recitals and games and parent conferences. And when Linda got sick, I'd thrown myself even harder into work, because the hospital was too hard. Watching her slip away was too hard, and work was something I could control. I'd spent 5 years drowning in guilt, and David had known exactly how to use it. What about Emma? Rebecca asked. She's attached to him. She's 7. She'll forget. Kids are resilient. I watched them through the camera, my son and his wife, discussing my future like I was already gone, like I was already a problem they'd solved. Over the next week, I collected evidence. I recovered old emails from accounts David didn't know I had. I found the power of attorney documents, saw where signatures had been forged on amendments I'd never seen. I discovered he'd been paying his mortgage on a rental property in Tempe with my credit card, a property I didn't know existed. The cameras caught more conversations, plans for a trip to Hawaii once things were finalized, discussion of which nursing home would be cheapest. Rebecca complaining that Emma's school was too expensive for what they were paying, but they couldn't move her until they'd sold my house. My house, which they were planning to sell. While I was alive, I spent those days feeling like I was floating outside my own life, watching it from a distance. I made breakfast for Emma. I smiled at David's stories about work. I thanked Rebecca for dinner. And every night, I watched the cameras and documented everything. Monica Chen recommended a lawyer, Harold Feldman, elder law specialist. He met me at a Starbucks, took one look at everything I'd compiled, and his face went still. Mr. Harrison, your son has committed multiple felonies, financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult, forgery, identity theft. You could press criminal charges. He's my son. He's stealing from you. He's planning to institutionalize you against your will and liquidate your assets. This isn't teenage shoplifting. This is elder abuse. I stared at my coffee, watching the steam rise. What do I do? First, we revoke all powers of attorney immediately. Second, we file for a restraining order. Third, we secure your home and assets. Fourth, we decide whether to pursue criminal or just civil remedies. But Mr. Harrison, you cannot continue living with him. It's not safe. He's never been violent. Financial abuse often escalates. He's taken $135,000. When you cut off access, he'll panic. Desperate people do dangerous things. The next day, while David was at work and Rebecca had taken Emma to school, I changed the locks. I had the locksmith install deadbolts, the kind that needed keys on both sides. Harold had filed the papers that morning. Restraining order, eviction notice, revocation of all legal authorities. When David came home that afternoon, his key didn't work. I opened the door but stood in the doorway. Behind me, Harold stood in the hallway, a witness, a protection. Dad? What's going on? The key doesn't work. I know, David. His face shifted, confusion to concern. Dad, are you okay? Let me in. We'll figure out what's wrong with the lock. I know about the money. I know about the accounts, the transfers, the plans, all of it. The concern vanished. Something else took its place. Something cold. What are you talking about? I have recordings, David, bank statements, emails, forged signatures. You've stolen over $135,000 from me. You've been planning to put me in a home and sell this house. My house? Dad, you're confused. This is exactly what we've been worried about. You're not remembering things clearly. Maybe it's time we talk to a doctor. I'm not confused. And I'm not senile. You're served. Harold stepped forward, handed him papers. Restraining order. You're to vacate immediately and maintain no contact. You have 30 minutes to collect personal items. Anything left will be stored for retrieval at a later date. David's face went red, then white. You can't do this. This is my home too. I have rights. You have no rights here. This house is in my name. You were a guest. Now you're trespassing. Rebecca's car pulled up behind David's. She got out, Emma in tow, took one look at the scene, and her expression hardened. What's happening? Your husband has been stealing from me. You both have. You're leaving. Now. Emma started crying. That was the worst part. She didn't understand, couldn't understand, and all she knew was her papa was yelling, and her parents were scared and angry. Papa? She tried to run to me, but Rebecca grabbed her arm. Emma, stay here. You're insane, David hissed. You're a paranoid old man who can't accept that you need help. We were trying to help you. Help me by stealing my retirement. Help me by forging my signature. Help me by planning to institutionalize me. You're going to regret this. That's your granddaughter. You're really going to choose money over your family? The words hung in the air. I looked at Emma, crying in her mother's arms. At David, my son, a stranger, wearing my son's face. You chose money over family, David. You chose it the day you decided to rob me. Now get out. They left, finally. David shouting threats about lawyers in custody and Thanksgiving. Rebecca cold and silent, dangerous in her stillness. Emma sobbing, calling for me, not understanding why Papa wouldn't hug her goodbye. I closed the door and stood in the sudden silence of my house. Harold put a hand on my shoulder. You did the right thing. Then why does it feel like I just lost everything? Because love and loss aren't logical. You can be right and still grieve. The civil suit took 6 months. David fought, claimed I'd given him the money, that I was incompetent, that I'd promised him the house. But the evidence was overwhelming. The recordings, the forged documents, the paper trail Monica Chen had helped me build. The judge ordered restitution. David would have to pay back the $135,000, though Harold was pessimistic about actually seeing the money. Garnished wages, payment plans, bankruptcy protection, it could take decades. The point, Harold said, is that he can't do it again. Your assets are protected. Your autonomy is protected. I sold the house 6 months after that. Too many memories, and not all of them bad, which somehow made it worse. I bought a smaller place in Sun City West, a retirement community where everyone was starting over, where no one asked too many questions about absent children or silent phones. I see a therapist now. Dr. Sarah Martinez, Tuesday afternoons, talks about complicated grief and betrayal, trauma, and the guilt of surviving while relationships die. She's the one who helped me understand that I'd been grieving David long before I cut him off. Grieving the son I thought I had, the son who maybe never existed. Emma sends me letters sometimes. Rebecca allows that much, supervised and screened. They're short, careful. Dear Papa, I got an A on my spelling test. I miss you. No return address. No phone number. Just proof that she's alive and hasn't forgotten me entirely. David tried to reach out once, a year after everything. Email sent through a friend's account. I made mistakes, but so did you. You chose money over your family. Still blaming me, still convinced he was the victim. I didn't respond. My life is quieter now. I play poker on Thursday nights with a group of retirees who all have their own stories about children who disappointed them. Marriages that ended. Plans that fell apart. We don't dwell on it. We play cards and tell jokes and go home to our small houses and cable news and early bedtimes. I volunteer at the library on Mondays. I took up woodworking, something I'd never had time for when I was working. I make small boxes, bowls, picture frames, useful things, things that hold other things safely. Sometimes I take out the old photo albums. Linda and me on our wedding day, impossibly young. David as a baby, a toddler, a teenager. Was he always capable of what he did? Or did I make him that way somehow, with my absences and my guilt? Dr. Martinez says those questions don't have answers. Says I'm looking for a narrative that makes sense when some things just don't. But late at night, when the desert is dark and quiet, and I'm alone with my thoughts, I still wonder. I wonder if I could have done something differently, if I could have loved better, been present more, created a son who wouldn't steal from his own father. And then I remember the recordings, the coldness in his voice, the old man, the calculations, the plans, the casual cruelty. And I know that whatever I did or didn't do, David made his choices. I can't carry that for him. The strangest thing about betrayal is how it changes your memories. Every Christmas and birthday, every I love you, Dad, every hug, they're all suspect now. Were any of them real, or was I just a target all along? A retirement fund with a heartbeat. I'll never know. That's something else Dr. Martinez says I need to accept. Last month, I took a trip Linda and I had always planned. The Grand Canyon, but the North Rim, the quiet side. I stood at the edge and looked out at all that ancient rock, all that time made visible, and felt something shift inside me. I'm 63 years old. I have maybe 20 good years left, maybe 30 if I'm lucky. I can spend them angry and bitter, dwelling on betrayal, or I can spend them building something new. Small boxes, library shifts, poker games, letters from a granddaughter who may or may not remember me when she's grown. It's not the life I planned. It's not the ending Linda and I talked about in the dark, when she was dying, and we were trying to imagine my future without her. But it's mine, and no one can take it from me. That's worth something. Maybe everything. I drove back from the canyon as the sun set, painting the desert in colors that don't have names. Somewhere out there, David was living his life, telling his story, maybe even believing he'd been wronged. Emma was growing up, becoming someone I wouldn't recognize. And I was here, alive, free, heading home to a house that was really mine, to a life I'd chosen, even if the choosing had been forced. The desert is beautiful at sunset. Linda always said that. She was right about most things. I think she'd understand what I did. I think she'd forgive me for losing our son in order to save myself. At least, I tell myself that. It helps. On the nights when forgiveness feels impossible and the silence feels too loud, it helps.